Welcome to the first in the series of videos Business and Arts is producing, where we speak to arts organizations nationally to figure out how they are adapting their programming and offerings during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Karan Sahadio, and I am the Creative Director at Business and Arts. The purpose of this series is to share approaches and best practices, and hopefully to inspire others who may be struggling with adapting during this time of crisis. In this first episode, we speak to Gilad Cohen, the founder and executive director of JAYU, a registered Canadian charity and leader in the space where arts and human rights intersect, to talk about how his team is adapting their programming, what hiccups they are facing, and how they're keeping their priorities during this unsettling time.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here today. I'm excited to share a little bit more about JAYU and the work we do. So my name is Gilad Cohen. I'm the founder and executive director of JAYU. JAYU is a Toronto-based charity that is committed to sharing human rights stories through the arts. So we have a number of programs that we offer. I want to say like pre-COVID programs that we offer year-round. We do the annual Human Rights Film Festival, which happens each year in December. We have a podcast called The Hum, where we interview people with really unique human rights experiences. And then we also have a really cool program called I Am, which is an initiative where we provide arts, social justice, and leadership training to over 250 underserved youth from across the GTA. It's a free program that youth can access. They're given all the equipment they need. They're given transit tokens. There's a hot meal served at the end of every workshop. And youth just gain really valuable skills and also employment from that experience. And I'm sure you probably have a question related to like how we're operating now in this COVID-19 world. So I'll maybe wait for you on that.
Oh yeah, literally my next question is like, how are you adapting? What are you and your team doing to adapt programming to physical distancing?
Yeah, so I'll preface it by saying first, like it was really scary when we started to realize what was going on, and it all happened really quickly. Like I remember in the middle of May, there was like hesitation first around like shutting down the office, and then we put our programming on like a 1 week hiatus, and then a 2 week hiatus, and then it started to become really clear that this was going to be longer than a multi-week thing, and we were probably looking at a multi-month thing. So for us, we were really scared at first because for us, everything we offer, except for maybe that podcast, is offered as an in-person experience. And so when you remove the ability to bring people together in person, whether it's workshop or screenings or presentations, it's sort of hard to justify our existence. And so we actually had a bit of a mind shift. And rather than being afraid of what was going on, we understood that this was a really good opportunity to pivot and pivot really quickly. And we understood that we had to pivot quickly because we wanted to be one of the first to start offering things in a new way, mostly to bring our community back together, but also to justify to funders why we should still be something that should be supported. And so a few exciting things I can talk about. So the I Am program, which we offer, has been sort of repackaged, repurposed, and we offer it virtually now. So we just put a call out a few days ago. So we're offering our photography program, we're offering a filmmaking program, a poetry program, and also a collaging program to underserved youth from across the GTA. What's really great is that our call out has only been out for a few days, and we're already at the point where we have a waiting list for participants. So we're seeing that there's a real need and a real interest in still wanting to get involved in our programming. The program will remain the same in terms of what we're offering and what we're teaching. It's just going to be done virtually now. So we're really excited to see how that plays out. And in terms of our screenings, we've pivoted there as well. And we actually really quickly, when this happened, we thought this would be a really good opportunity to offer a screening online for people. People are at home. They're looking for something to do. There's no distractions with going out. And so we quickly in 10 days put together a screening of a documentary called Coming Home, which was about a man from the Bronx who was wrongfully incarcerated for 13 years for a crime he didn't commit. And so we got him and the filmmaker to agree to join us for a Q&A. So with just 10 days turnaround, we started promoting the film. People were able to register and access the film for free the day of. Was Tuesday, March 31st, I believe. They were able to access the film that day. So we actually had way more people participate than we thought. The film screened, and then once the film ended, we did a live Q&A where people could tune in and watch the Q&A. We actually had 984 people or 983 people join us at the exact same time for that Q&A on Facebook, which was huge. That actually made it our largest ever, largest attended single event ever for us. And so, like, even though we had very little time to pivot, we actually put on what could be maybe considered our most successful event ever. And of course, for the guy who was wrongfully incarcerated, he's still dealing with with the challenge of getting exonerated. He still has not been exonerated. So to bring together 983 people around a very important cause was huge. And what's also, my last point to this, what's really great is that it wasn't just limited to a Toronto audience, which like an in-person screening limits us to. We actually had viewers from all over the world tune in. So it was like a huge opportunity for us. And we looked at that and we're like, whoa, maybe this is something we should just continue doing even in like the post-COVID world. It was like we didn't have to pay for a venue to rent. We didn't have to pay for certain things that you'd have to pay for in person. It was actually way more accessible, not just for people who are tuning in from home, but for us as well as a charity to put on. So we're pivoting and we're learning as we go along.
Why did you decide to kind of take this approach? And you were speaking about the coming home digital screening, which I didn't get a chance to watch the actual screening, but I tuned into the Q&A, which was also very amazing. And as of last night, 2,300 people have seen it.
Wow.
So yeah, why did you take this approach? Why are you moving everything digital? Is it the only way you can see JAYU moving forward during this time, or is it something that are these programs that you've had in mind for a while now and have just accelerated the launch of them?
It's actually a few things. So first, I'll talk like I wear different hats. So I'll say like as like an employer, as like the executive director of an organization. For me, I was looking around at what was happening in Toronto and elsewhere, and it's really scary if you're working in the arts and in the charitable sector or nonprofit sector or really any sector. It's happening across the board with businesses, small businesses, large businesses. There are a ton of layoffs, and so for me, one of my biggest concerns immediately was how do I keep my staff on board? How do I make sure that we haven't laid anybody off? And I'm actually happy to say that at this point, nobody yet has been laid off. We still have 7 full-time people working at JAYU. So for me to justify paying people and to have money come in the door, we still need to be doing something. So I would say like one of the primary driving forces was this was the only way we can justify our existence, was to move things online. And yes, you did highlight it. Like it was something we've been thinking about for a while. Our IM program is something that has a huge impact for youth. It helps build their self-esteem, their confidence, their sense of self-worth. And unfortunately, we've only been able to offer it locally because it's an in-person experience. We've always wondered, how can we offer this virtually? And for years, we've been like, yeah, we'll think about it. We'll figure it out. This actually forced us to innovate really quickly. It pushed us to get something out the door almost immediately. And so something that took years of thinking about, we've actually now executed and are beginning to deliver on within like a 2-week turnaround. So that's obviously one of the things as well. But also for us, a lot of people in the community rely on JAYU for a place to meet, to gather, to become inspired, to learn. There are a lot of people who like look at JAYU as the central point to their community. And if we didn't offer something online soon, people who really need that community for whatever reason, would be lacking in some way. And so it was really important for us to like roll out something just so that a community still existed for people to come to. We are all experiencing some form of trauma with what's happening with this pandemic. Some obviously more than others. There are others who have healthcare issues or might know someone who might have health scares. There are people who are losing their jobs. There's this uncertainty of when will I be able to go outside again? Like our day-to-day lives have been disrupted and uprooted. And of course, I think it's trauma for people in some sort of way. And so this is why the arts are so important. This is why it's good for people to have distractions, whether they're making art or whether they're consuming art, like whether it's just like through Netflix or a film that JAYU's doing or a workshop that we're doing with our IM youth. These sorts of things help us with our trauma. It helps us with our mental health. And that's also a huge reason why we and other arts organizations have to continue to like push ahead and innovate to continue to create these like spaces and opportunities for people.
So how are you doing this technically, and what were some learning curves that you had to adapt to? And also something else is, how are you keeping your priorities? Because I noticed at the beginning of the Q&A session, you did a land acknowledgement, which land acknowledgements are already fairly tricky because of their perceived authenticity. And to have an online version of that where I guess location is up in the air, right? It depends where you are.
Yeah, so technically, we're still sort of learning it. Like with the screening, for example, we had a 10-day turnaround time. I don't know that we offered the best technical solution. People were given access to like a Vimeo link with a password that would expire within 24 hours, which was actually really great because it gave people the space to watch the film in the morning if they wanted to, or in the evening, or if they actually missed the screening in the Q&A, that link was still active for 24 hours. So they could still watch the film the next day and still come back to the Q&A the next day. So, which again, like gives you way more flexibility than going to an in-person screening that, you know, you have to physically get up, go to, and there's a time limit on it. If you don't make the screening, it's over. This gave people more flexibility. The technical aspect is still something that we're learning. I wouldn't be surprised if someone put out a platform, or there might already be one, where you can have these like viewing parties similar to something that Netflix already has, but for a film that maybe might exist outside of the Netflix database. So we're waiting on someone to sort of maybe innovate or come up with a solution for those things. For our workshops right now, I think it's just mostly going to be Google Hangouts. We're really lucky that as a non-for-profit, we have access to free Google Hangouts. I know a lot of people have been using Zoom, and I think WebEx was something that I was on today. But yeah, I think you're going to start to see a lot of like digital innovation as the needs for like digital solutions increase. In terms of our priorities or the things that we're still deeming to be important, the land acknowledgement, I do agree, is something that sometimes feels more like a box you have to check off. A lot of times I don't feel like people even understand why they're doing a land acknowledgement. I feel like sometimes they're doing it out of fear that there might be a backlash if they didn't do it. For us at JAYU, we've always tried, at least for ourselves, to figure out like, how does this land acknowledgement relate to the work that we're doing? And so for us, a lot of times when we do screenings, what's really important in Indigenous cultures is this idea of storytelling. Most Indigenous cultures that I know of are like very rooted in oral traditions. And so passing on stories is really important. So, you know, when we do land acknowledgements, we'll talk a lot about the tradition of storytelling, and then we'll tie that back into this idea that JAYU is a storytelling organization. We tell human rights stories through the arts. So we get people to think about that. But for the online screening that we did last week, the land acknowledgement for me was actually, I found it to be a really cool opportunity because, like I said earlier, we had listeners tuning in from all over the world, not just in Toronto or Canada, but from places where doing land acknowledgements might not be so common. And so for many people, if we had 983 viewers, and now you say over 2,000, this might be the first time that they've ever heard of a land acknowledgement. And it might like have encourage people who were listening to think about their relationship to their land as well, and who were the first peoples that were there, or who are the traditional caretakers of whichever land they call home. So for me, it was viewed more as an opportunity rather than anything else. And I hope that we still continue to see this in more events, but also being thoughtful about it, not just having it be a box they check off, but really thinking about like, how does this land acknowledgement relate more deeply to the work that I'm doing? So I'm curious to see how other organizations handle that as well.
How important is it to get things right? Like you said that you kind of had to accelerate a few things and you're testing different tech. How important is it to get it right before doing it rather than get something out and figuring it out later?
You talked earlier, actually, before you asked this question, about how you're a perfectionist, and trust me that I'm very similar in that way. But my general my general like attitude towards JAYU and anytime we roll something out is that we're always learning. Like I'm a perfectionist while also realizing that nothing will ever be perfect. Yeah. It's like a bit of a like butting heads thing there, but I don't think that it is important to expect something to be perfect when you put it out. I think put something out, like be open to this idea that it's not going to be perfect, that there's always going to be room to improve. And then that will automatically alleviate this pressure. And most people look for reasons why not to do something, whereas they should just really be doing it and then looking for reasons or ways to improve it and getting better. And so like by removing this expectation of it being perfect, it frees you to actually want to do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I read this book when I was in university. It must have been like 2008 or whatever it was. And it's called Rework by Jason Fried. It's the guy who is behind Basecamp. And one of the lessons there was, don't be afraid to put out an unfinished product. Never put out a broken product, but don't be afraid to put out an unfinished product and then build on it later, because nothing is ever finished. Nothing is ever perfect. But get it to a place where it's not broken for the user and put it out there, and everything else will work itself out.
It's
kind of been like my guiding like mantra, I guess, as a perfectionist myself, because my tendency is like, okay, let's wait until this is ready, then we'll do that. But just do it.
I could not have said it better. Yeah. That's exactly it.
So next question, what has been the response from your attendees or participants? And like, what was their feedback? And to piggyback off of something you said earlier, what have you noticed about their locations? Where are they tuning in from?
Yeah, so for our screening, we actually had people tuning in from everywhere. There were countless countries. I think like more than a dozen different countries people were tuning in from. The Q&A itself, we had a filmmaker from Ireland calling in, and the Q&A was hosted by two folks from Canada, and then the subject of the film was from the US. Like we had 3 countries represented just in the Q&A alone, which I think was really, really awesome. The feedback has been great. I mean, right now it's only been a couple weeks, so we don't have a ton of feedback from our IM program yet. But we actually reached out to some of our youth before we launched the program to ask them how they were feeling. And we do work with a lot of underserved youth who face a lot of barriers. And they have, from what we've seen, they have talked about an increased need for programming. So it made it feel more urgent. In terms of the screening itself, we got really great feedback. A lot of people were really thankful. People were given something to do for the evening. People got to learn about something that was really urgent and important. And for that screening, I think, the guy himself who was wrongfully incarcerated, for him, it was even most important. He had 983 people, 2,000, as you say now, who are more engaged with his story, who can become advocates for him, who can help push his case along. So the response has been great. The numbers have been great so far. And I think we're really thankful that people are being supportive of JAYU and the work that we're doing in this time.
Yeah, I think you touched on a great point earlier too. It's you're investing a lot of time in trying to figure out this technology, and I mean, we're all hoping that there is a better solution. But this time that we're all spending right now figuring out we'll still be using this in the future. I think once things turn back to a normal time, we'll still be looking at things like digital screenings, and we'll figure out how to monetize that.
Yeah.
How do you? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I really didn't have a question. It's kind of going ahead.
I think the one thing that makes me think of immediately, and I know you have a non-question, so this is also a non-answer, but I'm just going to vent for a little bit. I think for a lot of people, they're probably thinking in the wrong way if they're thinking that once things go back to normal, everything, including the way we interact with the digital world, will go back to normal. We're very fortunate as a charity where we've been able to pivot online and do things online. But for performers or for other spaces where it's a bit harder to pivot in that way, I worry about them. And I also worry about people who are just like waiting to ride this out and waiting for the pandemic to sort of go away. I think if you don't use this opportunity right now to pivot and to understand how you as an artist or how you as an organization fit in this temporary, possibly permanent world. I don't mean the pandemic is permanent, but I mean like our interaction with the digital space, then you're really doing your organization or your own art a disservice. I feel all of us have been sort of like pushed into a corner right now where we have to come up with solutions, not just for now, but for later as well.
I mean, that's a perfect non-answer for my non-question. Awesome. All right. And finally, where can we find out more about what you're doing? What do you guys need?
Yeah. There's a couple things I want to highlight. So one, it is really scary right now for a lot of charities, nonprofits, and arts organizations. There's a lot of uncertainty around funding. There are some funding freezes. There's also some uncertainty around where like funding will come through next. We've actually launched a fundraising campaign online. We're hoping to raise about $25,000 through the month of April to help support our programming. Anyone who's interested can visit us at JAYU.ca. That's JAYU.ca/donate. And you can use again that same website, JAYU.ca, to learn more about us. You can go onto Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and our handle is JAYU Canada, JAYU Canada, and that's where we promote a lot of our work. We also have this really awesome newsletter that I should talk about. We send it out every week. We've been sending it out every week before COVID. We always send out like great resources around arts and human rights events that are happening in the city, articles we're reading, art that inspires us. If you just go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletter. It comes out every week, and it's just, I think, like a good break also from the COVID-19 news that we're getting.
Oh, brilliant. Well, Gilad, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.